Okay, so today I want to talk about Substance Painter. You may have been exploring some of the 3D paint tools in Maya. Find out that they're a little limited, I think. Like in the FX, or I'm sorry, the rendering, you can kind of go and add a 3D paint tool, then start basically painting around the object. So what you're basically doing is you're painting on the UVs of the object. So in other words, if you go to your modeling, you'll basically be painting on these 2D objects right here in a way that you're not painting on, like say if you were to snapshot this screen and bring it into Photoshop, but you'll actually be painting on it real time, so where you could kind of scroll around and paint on it at the same time and use like a brush or use the sensitivity of a brush and stuff like that. For instance, I was painting on my frog here earlier and using some of the different brushes to kind of paint on him as I worked around in the actual 3D viewport. And if you notice, my UV maps are laid out over here so you can see what's going on, but it's a pretty fast way of getting some awesome textures down, kind of utilizing that whole sculpt asset or a sculpt procedural way of doing things. The same way with 3D or with painting, instead of basically adding images to the UVs in general, then bringing these into Photoshop and doing it in Photoshop, and then bringing it, wrapping it. You kind of work in real time, in other words. It's really a lot easier. Now, I've got a very simple object right here. The only thing you really need to make sure you do is you unwrap these objects in Maya before you take them out, so you can have a clean UV set basically for Substance Painter to read. So you should be familiar with that. Actually, you can go up to UV automatic and see what happens. It's not too bad. I don't really suggest using automatic all the time, but it seems to lay these things out to where Substance is going to read this pretty easy. So I'm going to go back to object mode. And the only thing too about Substance Painter, it's actually an Adobe product, I believe. Yeah, that's Adobe product. Simply the fact that that's why the interface is actually kind of maybe more familiar to you if you've been using Photoshop and stuff like that. Plus, it's got a great community with forums and stuff like that. And if you can see from the promo video here, it's pretty user friendly in terms of like digital artists. The way they can kind of use a Wacom tablet and stuff like that on there. A lot of presets. It's got a layer tab over here. Let's just go ahead and open it up and see. So the only thing is, like, if you are familiar with Mudbox, how you could kind of go back and forth from Maya to Mudbox, but you can't really do that with Substance Painter, so you need to export this thing out as an FBX. So I'm going to select this thing, and this is just some, who knows what this is. Something we can paint on. Export selection. I'm just going to call it the thing. Save Maya. So you want to open Substance Painter. Well, where is Substance Painter? The best thing to do is to get a university school's license for it. It's free, just like Maya is. So just go here to the link. I'll leave it down below, and get your free license. Got to use your school email, and you're free. It's kind of limited, but it gets the job done, especially for this kind of stuff. So that's how you download it. Open it back up. I'm going to open up a new scene here so we can see what's going on. Actually, let me close it up. That way we can show you how. I don't want to save any of those. So I have it on my desktop right here, and I'm going to open it up. Now the thing about it is, before you come out of Maya, you can actually add, what it does, in other words, is this thing will extract textures from Substance to work with the Arnold render. which is good because the Arnold renders are awesome. But what it does, it extracts textures from Substance Painter to actually add to the attributes of the standard surface shader. So in other words, it's going to give me a base. When I go extracting maps from it, it's going to give me all these different maps I can kind of compile in my standard surface shader to work. So let me just go ahead and add a standard surface shader before I even take it out. So I have one in here. Arnold standard surface shader. I'll open up my Hypershader, rename it. This is going to be my theme, my Substance Painter demo. Cool. Now I'm going to save this. This was unwrapped. Well, now I'm going to export this thing as an FBX. Export selection. Did I just do this? I'm not sure. But either or, I wanted to add the surface shader before I export it. So we'll call it, oh, I did. Okay, well, we're doing it again. I'll just override it. The thing, FBX. All right, let me close this out. So this is Substance Painter. Here's your layer tabs, your properties tabs. See, it's kind of laid out like kind of like a Photoshop. You got your tools over here, your bars up here. There's a lot of stuff that I don't know about in this just because it's new to me too. But I mean, for what I have been using, it's awesome. So I want to introduce it to you guys. You got your tools, you got your materials down here. You got your brushes, and these can all be adjusted in the properties, obviously. Smart materials, which add kind of like presets where you can just add the entire thing over. Let's go and bring something in here. Select template. This is our file we want to select. We want this thing. Where's it at? The thing. Document resolution. You don't want to have it so low. You want to have it a nice resolution there. Anything higher is like 4K. I don't really have that, so 2048 is fine. I'm going to open it up. So now you can see I have my model and I have my UV map right here. And this is kind of cool because it works in the same interface style as like Maya. Basically, you have your pan, your middle mouse key. You can hit Alt, kind of rotate around it. Now, if you notice, it's kind of got that color below. That's because it's just got a light in the scene, just how Maya has a default lighting. You can change that. I just don't really. And you can go ahead and start dropping stuff on here. See, you've got your layers over here. You got this property paint tab over here of your brush. You can adjust the size, the stroke opacity. Yeah, so your layers, and that looks very familiar, just like Photoshop. So I'm going to paint on this first layer. I'm just going to drop a aluminum smart material on here, and it already just floods it with that. So if I wanted to change that, if you notice, it gives you a folder over here, and it gives a presets of how that material is made up. So if you wanted to take something away, you can. I want to go ahead and delete that whole thing. I'm going to add another here. Check this out, this bone styles. Look at that thing here, it's pretty cool. Say I want to take this dirt look out to it, you can kind of go ahead and take that off. Now it's just that. I kind of like that. I'm going to go ahead and paint on this. That's what I was doing with my other frog. Now I don't want to paint on this layer, so I'm going to close that folder back up so it's just one layer, and I'm just going to add another layer here. And I'm going to use my brush. Get a little mark here, see what I've got. It's not too bad. Let me use a material and see what that looks like. So I've got this like aluminum. I don't know, I kind of like that one right there. So that one will look better if I was to paint, something on here. I don't really know what this object would be used for. See the way it goes around the curves and you're kind of painting on it, but see the way it changes in the UV layout over there? That's so awesome in terms of like painting materials and seeing materials that way, instead of having to do it over here, rearrange all these and bring it into Photoshop and do it. Another cool effect, which I think these are really cool. Now it's got an eraser on here too, so if you don't like, just erase it, and you're actually working on that layer. So this is always cool here. I was messing with these earlier. Basically, it will take this look of it and use particles to kind of like make this effect, and you can adjust this actually. So like if I spread this on the top. Actually, before I do that, let me just show you this different type of brush down here. Here's some cool hatching. Let's use like stamps. It's pretty self-explanatory. Let's go back to this particles. This fracture thing. Say if you stretch this thing across, it's pretty cool the way it kind of makes it like, it lets the particles kind of work for you. In other words, see the way it's working its way across all the UVs, and you can adjust this too. So that's really neat. I'm going to add another layer, and I'm going to go over here to my brush. Change the color, the denim color, to a dark purple. It's cool. So I can have something to kind of show when I bring it back into Maya. So it looks like a cool stone object that some people went and messed up by spraying some graffiti on. Okay, so we have our object done. We're ready to take this back into Maya so we can kind of like put it into our scene and add some lights. Now, a little bit about this. It's going to, whenever you extract these textures back, it's going to give us like 4 or 5 or 6 maps to kind of start plugging these into the surface shader node. And the best thing to do is have this here reference sheet going into it, because it shows us where to do it and how to have the settings set up in Maya. But the first thing you got to do is you need to go extract textures, export textures, I'm sorry. Now I have a folder on here that I created for this, texture folder. This really should be your source images folder and your project folder. And the only other thing you need to do is you need to change this output template to Arnold AI standard. That's where the money is. Export. So now I've got a base color PNG, an emissive PNG, a height PNG, metalness PNG, normal PNG, and a roughness PNG. And you use this table right here to go exactly where in the AI standard surface thing shader node and plug them in at. So you could save this. Let's just save the scene. Where is that? And this actually saves as your Substance Painter file. Close it up, open up Maya, and the best thing to do is to head into the Hypershader. We'll be dealing with this node right here. We already have our AI standard here. Open it up, and this is where we're going to be plugging everything in at. Let me get my sheet over here ready. Probably should scoot it over here a little bit. barely do that one. That one in. So the first one is base color. That should be in my folder here. And this tells you exactly where the attribute is, base color. This is a substance texture that it was exported out. These are important here too because you need to make sure that that's what these color spaces on, and that's what, in the next selection here, you'll see it here. So it's good to pay attention to all three of these attributes. But the first thing we're looking for is base color. So base color, file. Where's where we load our image at? Color. Alright, so if you don't see anything in the viewport, go ahead and press 6, because sometimes you'll get that and you'll be like, why doesn't my load? Just press 6. Here's that color space thing too. sRGB, that's exactly where we need it. That's cool. And already, it looks good. It's kind of how it was, but we want to add those other maps to it to kind of give it that realistic look. So let's go to roughness. So the next one is roughness. That would be in the specular. Let's look for that. Add a roughness map to it. I'm going to add it. You don't necessarily have to add all these maps if you don't really want to, but it's good to see how they're going to look. Roughness. I'm starting to get something now. Metalness. Base metalness. Metalness right there. Went dark, no worry. Metalness. And everything's still looking good with the, probably could change this to raw. I'm going to leave it right there though, just for right now. I'm going to go back and change them to see, but I'm kind of going good with it now, so I don't want to screw it up. I do need to change this one thing right here to the normal tangent setup. So for the next one, this is where we got to add this use tangent space. So the bump map is located in, there's not really a thing called bump map. You don't see it in the regular base. It'd actually be in the geometry of the AI surface shader. Bump mapping right here. I'm going to actually go out to the other, I think it's easier to find this way. Let me press 6 here. I'm going to go to my attribute editor here. I think it's easier to. Yeah, we want to use it as tangent space normal. Is that what it is? Tangent space normals. And this is where I add my image at. Which is my bump 2D for my normal camera. Looks like it's, oh yeah, that's it. Okay. Weird the way it like offset it in the viewport like that. Something to be scared about there. So the last map I want to add is my displacement map, which is kind of the height map. In other words, sometimes I need it, sometimes I don't, but I'm just going to go ahead and add it in. I may have to tweak it, I'm not really sure. I have this selected, I have this up there, and this, the way you get to it though is kind of tricky. You just out to your base right here. If you click this right here,
You can see it right here, displacement material. I'm going to add it to file. Height map. Because you may have to go back and kind of readjust this scale some. You just put, so it looks offset, but it doesn't look too bad. All in all, it doesn't look as bad, you know, like bringing it in. It's just kind of a procedural bringing them in. You may have to adjust the scale of the displacement map. So yeah, I'm going to drop a physical sky in this thing and see what this thing looks like. Yeah, ground plane. Run this. Check this out. I don't know, it's too bad. It's like the displacement map's not, well, you can kind of see how it's kind of raising a little bit. I may need to go back out and adjust it. If you notice, when I did add the displacement map, it gave me a note up here, which is kind of cool, so that way I can go ahead and adjust my scale if I wanted to. What if I just cranked it up to 1? You can see it starting to work a little bit, maybe. Oh yeah, you can see some right there. But yeah, that's the way you do it. You bring these textures back. It's kind of a little procedural workflow. It's kind of fun though, because I kind of look at the way, like, you know, if you don't really actually need that one map, you don't really have to apply it, but they do. It is really easy to extract those maps and bring them in. Like I said, Substance Painter is pretty vast in the fact that what you can do with like a lot of this with your brushes and your filters and stuff like that. So it's really fun to have fun with. You know, like I would suggest, if you definitely not really good at taking UV snapshots and bringing them into Photoshop and everything else, then try to export it as an FBX and use Substance Painter as basically your painting go-to. And you may understand this whole layer system over here, being able to adjust opacities and everything a lot better, keeping things in the folder. The biggest thing is not to use one layer. Use multiple layers, so that way you can kind of go back and just experiment with something to see how the colors look together. So, and experiment with these tools and materials down here. Like I said, this is a vast one, so it's kind of like I'm still kind of new to Substance Painter too. But yeah, if you follow these, and I'll leave all the other links below so you can look at that little map of how to bring them back in there and how to download the whole program in general. So, okay, well, have fun with this, and thanks for watching, everyone.